Hey everybody, I'm Greg Soul, and I'm here with another CIQ demo. So today I'm going to be doing a quick start guide showing you how to use the Ascender automation platform to operate against network hosts. So today I've got a Nexus switch in my lab, and I'm going to be adding a VLAN to the VLAN database, and then adding that VLAN to the trunk port. And I'm going to show you all the steps required as quick as possible, right? Just the necessary. So I'm going to come into inventories. And in the last quick start guide, I actually used the default inventory. This time, I'm going to add one. So click add inventory. Most everything in here, if you want to add something, you just click add and go from there. So I'm going to make it network lab as the name. I'm going to click save. And again, an inventory is just a big list of all the hosts I could potentially operate against. So here I'm going to click on the host section. Now you see me manually adding these in here. Nexus 9K1, which is the host name, but I could also be using something called dynamic inventory sources or dynamic inventory scripts. And that's where they reach out to something and they pull that information in. That could be your CMDB, like ServiceNow, your configuration management database, or it could be like your network monitoring system that you already have, right? That's doing the discovery and the collection of all that information. You can pull all that stuff in. So I will add a special magic variable here. It's Ansible _ host. Now, if Nexus 9K was fully qualified domain name, like if Ansible or the Ascender automation platform, whenever it's running that Ansible playbook, I should say, if it can resolve the name, it will, and it will connect to that host and everybody's happy. In my lab, that isn't fully qualified, so I can add this magic variable, which is a variable known to Ansible, and it will be 10.0.50.27. And this Ansible host really just says, hey, whenever you're connecting to this host, use this IP address. Click save, and I'm technically done, right? That's all I really need to do, except for a caveat. Ascender and Ansible itself, whenever it wants to connect to a host by default, it's going to assume it's a Linux host, right? So it's just going to try and connect to it in that capacity. So I have to tell it, hey, you're not a Linux host. I have to change the way it's actually connecting just slightly. Now, I could have added some special variables to the host itself, but instead, I'm going to be using a group, and this is a really good utilization for groups. I'll name it Nexus right here in the group, and then I'll paste in those additional variables. So groups allow you to put a whole lot of hosts inside of a group, and instead of adding them all in my playbook one after another, you know, comma separated, I can just put the group name. So it makes it really easy to operate against a chunk of hosts. So imagine you have an application and you're moving hosts in and out of that group all the time. I don't have to keep track of what the hosts are. I just hit the group name. But groups also allow me to add special variabilized information just for those hosts, right? They're going to inherit this. So first I have to tell it Ansible connection is Ansible network CLI. So I'm telling it it's network CLI, right? So interface with this device as if it was, you know, like you on the terminal, like SSHing into something and smacking away at the keyboard. So if you will imagine for a second, most Linux servers, what it's going to do is Ascender will call an execution environment, it'll spin up, it'll connect to, say, the Linux server, it'll copy over files that will get executed over there, right? That's called remote execution. We're doing local execution here because it's a network device. It doesn't necessarily run Python. We can copy scripts over, so we're going to be SSHing in. So this line right there tells it to do that. Next, I need to tell it what flavor of network device it is, and here it is Cisco, NXOS, right? So you're telling it, one, hey, this is a network device, and then two, what language to speak, right? Is it French, Portuguese, English, Mandarin, right? And so here it's Nexus, iOS, Junos, you know, Arista OS, you know, you're really just telling it how to communicate with that device. Now that I've belabored that point, I'll click save, and then I will go to the host section, and I will add an existing host. I'll put my Nexus 9K1 in there. So now whenever I connect to it, it's in this group and it will automatically inherit those variables and we're able to connect. That's one of the biggest stumbling blocks I think people kind of run into when they are first trying to operate against networking devices. Next, we need credentials. So how are we actually going to log into this device? And we'll call it network lab. And then we'll lab credential, and it's going to be type machine. So most networking devices, as well as your servers, whether Windows or Linux, are going to use a machine credential to connect into it. And mine is very secure password, admin, and lab. And I will click save there. Now we've got a credential. So we've got the inventory, list of all the hosts we can operate against. We've got a credential. Now we actually need to bring our playbooks in. And we're going to do that via the project section. So project really just ties a sender into a Git repository, right? So that it can pull all those playbooks, all those template files, right? All of the source material you need to operate your automation. So this one is going to be, we'll call it Nexus ACL. I would encourage you to use descriptions, be as verbose as you can on all this stuff. With good descriptions, anybody who comes in after you is going to kind of better understand what's going on. So be a good admin. Don't be like me. I'm trying to go as fast as possible, so I'm skipping those. But source URL, I'm going to put in my public Git repository. I'm going to paste that right in there. If you actually did have it in a private repo, you could use the source credential right there. It'll pull all that good stuff in. I'm going to click save on this. And as soon as I save, it's going to go into this waiting state, and then it will move over to a synchronizing state. And what that's really doing is it means it's, oh, I'm connecting to that repository and I'm pulling all those files down. So next thing I'm going to do is add an execution environment into the system. So let's start by answering what is an execution environment. So really it's just a container that gets spun up that has your Python requirements, all the dependencies in there, as well as the collections you need. And so by default, the execution environment that comes with here doesn't have a whole lot of networking collections baked in. So I've created one that's got a whole bunch of different stuff. If you don't see one up and available from us, I would look for it. But I'm willing to bet you'll see one soon if it's not already there. But let's walk through the process of adding one in. So first, I'm going to add a credential. And I need to add a credential for my execution environment. It's really what it's going to do is it's going to connect to the container repository. So EEs, really just being containers, have to be stored in a container repository. I'm going to set mine up really quick. It's more or less, you give it a name, you tell it the type, container registry. I'm going to fill all my information in here, but I'm going to hide it from you, and we'll be back in just a second. All right, now that I have my credential for my container registry set up, I'm going to actually add the execution environment in, and that's done by going down here to administration and execution environments. So I'm going to click add. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to name it network EE for execution environment. Next, I'm going to paste in the image. But before I do that, I'm going to say only pull the image if not present before running, right? So there's three options here. Always pull container before running. That's going to slow things down because it's always going to be yanking that new container. This one says never pull, so it's only going to pull when you manually refresh this thing. And I want to say only pull the image if not present before running, which will say if I update the image name in here with a new revision number, if it doesn't already exist in here, then it'll go ahead and pull, right? To me, that's kind of the best of all of those worlds. Next, I'm going to choose registry credential. I've got my network EE right here, and I'm going to put my image in. Again, I'm going to hide this from you folks, but I'll be back in just a moment. Now that I have the execution environment created, you can see network EE right here. I'm going to bring it all home by creating a template. So let's go to the template section. I'm going to click add and add job template. Next, I'm going to give it a meaningful name, and we are doing Nexus 9K1 ACL, right? Because that's pretty much what we're doing. Next, I'm going to specify my inventory, network lab, that's what we're operating against. Project, remember our Git repository where we're pulling everything in, my Nexus ACL. Next, I'm choosing my execution environment. It is the network EE. Inside of that project, normally I'm going to have to choose which playbook I want to run, but as it so happens, this project or this Git repository only has one playbook in there, so we'll choose that one. Next, credentials. How are we going to log into this device? Network lab, select, save, and guess what I get to do now is click launch. Now again, on my very first launch, because this is a brand new execution environment, it's going to take a little bit longer because what it does is it pauses and says, oh, I can't execute this automation because the EE is not here yet. So it's going to reach out to my container registry. It's going to pull it in. It will then kick up my automation and process everything. So through the wonders of editing, I'm not going to make you wait on that. We'll come back when it's complete. All right, now the job has run. and subsequent runs will be, again, much faster because it's got that EE cached. But you could see everything that happened in here. So I can see changed on this event, and I've got a debug statement here, when a debug really is just spitting stuff out the screen. And it says, if there was a change before, show me all the commands you actually used on this device, this switch, this router, whatever it happened to be, to make that adjustment. It's really cool. So if you're accustomed to seeing command line Ansible, right, you're normally seeing this information, but you get it once and you never get to do anything else with it, right? It's very ephemeral. Whereas here, I can actually click on changed right there, and it shows me very detailed output of everything that it happened inside of here, right? So the very first thing I broke it into a data model, and then I took that data model and I pushed it in via these commands right here. So you could see that we got up and moving with a network device pretty quick. If you have any ideas of how you would use this environment, you would change it, you would tweak it, you would tune it, please reach out to us. We love comments. If you can think of some playbooks that you would have baked in, as you saw, maybe when we went to the job template section, we already have a big chunk baked in there. We're always looking to add new ones. So let us know what that would look like. If you are interested in the product itself and maybe purchasing, please contact us. If nothing else, happy ascending, happy networking, happy adjusting your ACLs, and we'll see you next time. Bye.